country could burn down, we jamming still, we jamming still. I mean, to some extent, you have to love it and kind of not love it. I don't want to say hate it, all at the same time. It's a positive and a negative. Now, to borrow or to quote the guru, those who know will know. I love my country. At the end of the day, those who understand the gravity of those words know that it's not all positive. I mean, you do a quick Google search, you get a lot of quotes about how hard love is. Love is hard because it requires sacrifice, but the rewards are immeasurable. Love is not always easy, but it is always possible. Love is a risk worth taking, even if it means getting hurt. Loving one's country is not easy, especially in 2024, where things got very complicated, but also during a time period where it seems as though, and I think a lot of it is unintentional, but stuff is happening to make it very hard to love one's country, right? But the irony of it is that, to some extent, it's hard to love, but you will never fall out of love. It's your home, it's the land of your birth, it's the place of your people, at least I hope it is. It is a thing that one would always yearn for. And thus, the question we have to ask is not if we're willing to make the sacrifices in order to get the immeasurable reward, not if we're willing to take the risk, but rather, it's not always easy, but it's always possible. Why are we showing behavior that implies differently, that we do not love? And it's not some obvious black hat wearing, mustache twirling villain that I'm talking about that hates the country, but rather it's almost like if we're all stereotypical parents that are slightly taking things for granted in the home front. You know, there's just too much things to worry about, and I have too much things to worry about at work, and with this activity and that activity, and then to some extent, all the kids in the home and the spouse, I have to kind of worry about all of them, and I spend so much time trying to give each of them a little bit of attention. I'm not necessarily stopping to think, how do I make it quality attention? Because to some extent, I don't believe the politicians intentionally want to do harm 100% of the time. And then there's room to debate, okay, is it 20% of the time, 10% of the time, 1% of the time, 50% of the time? How much bad intentions are there really? We can't necessarily say there are none. I don't think it's reasonable to make that assumption. But now we have to debate the degree. But the point is, it's not all of the time. But rather, part of the issues is, we love it. Think about all the relationships where you truly loved someone. Significant other, family member, friendships. You say you love them. You think you love them, you feel you love them, but you drop the ball. And are we dropping the ball of our country because there is truth in the words we jam it still? We love it, and yet the concept of it, if you ask people, they will say that they don't necessarily love it, that they hope that our country is not callous in that way, but to some extent, it is what it is, and it is what we make of it. Sure, Michael Small here. This is Talking Point at WESN Content Capital. Television with a difference. A medium that is fighting for its place in 2024 when the amount of media available to individuals is diverse and incredibly large in volume. But we will continue to show our love to our country. And with that said, let's start off today's Daily Review. Wanted to start off with some of the political stories that came out today. Kind of lumped them in together. I didn't necessarily want to highlight anything overly long, but wanted to point out some things. First, starting off with the Minister of Youth Development, Foster Cummings. And this came up in the post-cabinet press briefing. The Prime Minister isn't concerned with him suing the state. And when you look at Minister Cummings' suit, it is something of an interesting one. And I believe that ultimately he is looking to put in some foundational work to prepare for the upcoming general election. We don't necessarily know what the actual intention is or the details of it. Because at some point, both parties will be at a crossroads when the respective political leaders, and one would imagine certain older members of senior leadership would retire and move on. And I would imagine that Minister Cummings, he is not wanting to have any sort of suspicion over his head. Now, it's interesting, he is suing over a leaked special branch report that he wants the commissioner to withdraw or retract the report. The problem is, to some extent, I'm not entirely sure what he means by that technically, because it's not as though the commissioner published the report publicly. Unless I am mistaken, it was leaked. So you're basically asking someone to withdraw a statement they didn't make. And this might just be a debate on semantics, right? Maybe what he is hoping for is for her to refute it. But again, I'm not too sure exactly what he wants officially done, because the commissioner at the time when the report was issued, not necessarily when the report was leaked, but when the report was issued, I think timeline-wise, it might have been leaked after he was commissioner. He admitted that the allegations were unsubstantiated. And to some extent, at the very least, there's some proof in that, in the mere fact that the minister is still a minister and he hasn't been charged with anything. And again, whether we like it or not, the standard for criminal prosecution, I would hope, remains to be innocent until proven guilty. Again, whether we like the subject or not, I'm just not entirely sure exactly what he is looking to accomplish. I understand he's trying to defend his reputation. I just don't know if this is going to work. It's also interesting that, and I guess one could maybe argue this pokes a hole at all of the commentary that says the commissioner is not independent and basically plays to the tune of the PNM's fiddle. And while it doesn't necessarily disprove any such notions, it is interesting if you believe that, and to some extent, I would say I think some of that is true. Although the details, of course, gets more complicated. That's an oversimplification, if I'm to be honest. The fact that it seems as though the commissioner is not looking to move on this matter, at least not in the way the minister would like, and thus he is pursuing legal action, I find it interesting. Unfortunately, given what we have seen out of the commissioner, I will think that the most likely suspect is more about indecisiveness and inability rather than taking a stand on principle. But now, the other part of this that I wanted to mention, of course, the UNC elections is coming up, and I did mention yesterday, or not yesterday, but earlier on in the week, The STAR team, they presented proposals that are technically with regards to the general, but I guess the idea is we're presenting what we would bring to the table for the general so that you would vote for us in the internal. Well, one of the dissidents, MP Anita Haynes, she is pointing to, and it's something that I have pointed out, at least with regards to the leader, the fact that, look, senior party officials, they tend to be hiding from the media and members of the public, particularly when there are inconvenient things to be spoken about. Now, to be fair to the MP, but also it's a kind of redirect her framing, I don't think this is limited to just the UNC and more importantly to the current UNC executive. I think this is the majority of politicians. The majority of politicians do not understand professional public relations and mass communications, and one of three things tend to happen. They say something and it blows up in their face. They say nothing at all. Doesn't necessarily help the situation, but doesn't make it worse, or they get it right. That last one doesn't happen as often as the first two. One could argue, however, that to some extent, because they default to not say, the PNM administration in the first 6 months to a year, a lot of people were talking a lot of things, talking about all sorts of different issues. Prime Minister wasn't talking as much. And then eventually, so many people kind of didn't necessarily communicate effectively enough that they stopped talking or they limited what they said publicly one by one until the Prime Minister had to be the one now front and center. But I understand what MP Haynes is saying, because most notably the opposition leader is one of the least accessible politicians, in some ways even more inaccessible than some government ministers. Although to be fair, there are other government ministers who are just as, if not more, inaccessible because they don't even say anything publicly, much less weekly press conferences. And the fact of the matter is, the sheer amount of times a politician hides, it's because they have inconvenient things to speak about, or at least people want to ask them inconvenient questions. And I do wonder if, to some extent, one would hope that in a competitive environment that demands the cream to rise at the top, this is an area where, if one is willing to put in the work, they could use against their political opponents by pointing out their deficiencies and then not reverting or falling back to the pack and doing what it is they're doing. That's why, to some extent, I have disappointment with regards to the TPP, formerly the PDP, or at least certain members. We wanted better, we didn't always get better. MP Haynes, this could be a setup for a campaign where more transparency will be a selling point. And the funny part about it is, think about it, what are we getting sold on from the various other politicians who are starting to do prep work for the general? More taxes, less taxes. That's generally what it is, right? Although the Prime Minister, I don't know if he full pivoted on the messaging angles, but we'll get into that later. We're not necessarily getting more transparency, less transparency talk. I'm not saying that the MP is putting forward that case, but I'm saying this is a starting point. And historically speaking, past behavior is an indicator of future behavior. It might be something that a lot of her political opponents might not be able to keep up with because they've proven themselves incapable. And they hide away from the hard conversations. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, I'll get into some of the more headlines. There are a couple of things I want to speak about with regards to the post-cabinet press briefing and the Prime Minister's statements. One of them, of course, those who know me, it's going to be about what he said about tourism, but also certain other things with regards to messaging. And there are some crime stories that I can't just let slide. Again, it's not something we do all the time, but when certain things come up, We'll be right back after this.
Imagine a world where arguments don't exist. CICR is a full-service conflict resolution company that offers mediation training and workshops for all. In 2024, our 40-hour workshops are back, giving you all the tools you need to become a certified mediator in Trinidad and Tobago. Want to know more? Call us at 768-6778 or visit our website. Let's work together to make the world a better place.
Maybe he landed here totally by coincidence. But if by chance he's admiring your fresh coat of Benjamin Moore soft sky blue, well, that's a pretty high compliment. Coming from an expert.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
All right, welcome back to The Point That Is Talking, aka me, Sean Michael Small. Now, one of the things that I wanted to speak about yesterday, I mentioned it as I was going to the video that I had yesterday. The Minister of Labor, he made some statements. We, of course, had, let me just get it right. Well, anyway, the Minister of Labor, he pointed out the fact that apparently his ministry is looking to end child labor completely, absolute, by next year. And we're talking from an age group of 4 to 17 involved in child labor. So basically, because one would hope there isn't a 1-year-old, working in a factory somewhere or doing clerical work. He's basically pointing to an age group that is all children that practically can work. And they're looking to end it. As it seems like a blanket statement, because there are 4.3% of children in that age group. And this is one of the things I find funny. If you're going to basically spell out the ages of which work is practically within the capacity or the means of children. So it's excluded 18 and over, not children legally, and 3 years and younger. So basically, it's not an age group, it's children. You're basically, for all practical intents and purposes, saying 4.3% of children who can work are involved in child labor. 4 out of every 100 children. And I understand that. The problem is, we had a conversation with ASPLE, the TNT police, they had concerns about child labor as well. A lot of it is things like the begging and out on the streets, not being supervised, out in the elements, etc., etc. To some extent also child labor, and then there's a lot of gray area, and it makes me wonder exactly what does this statement mean? When politicians say these things, make blanket statements like this, there is a reasonable chance that something bad or foolish is going to happen, because the world does not work where everything in this large category is going to be defined as the same thing with the same details and the same factors, and they work exactly the same. So thus we could use a blanket statement to classify and deal with all of them. Take a blanket solution that's just going to be like a hammer and just smash them all to pieces. That's generally not how the world works, even with regards to concepts like this, which one would think it would be straightforward. Once you get onto a population level scale, things are almost never, ever straightforward. And the ASP pointed to the fact that his boys, they do have a job, which is strictly controlled by the employer about how much they could do so that they're not overworked, they're not exploited, etc., etc. And it's just so that they could spend some time working, getting their character developed, rounding out their personality, getting work experience, however minor it is, and earning some pocket change for themselves. So now the question is with regards to the details of the situation, because I believe it looks as though he's pointing to like all the different enforcement ways and who they're going to partner with, but the details of it, what does that mean, all child labor? Because now to some extent, first of all, does that mean that CXC graduates who don't move on into Form 6, that may or may not qualify to do subjects in a tertiary institution, what are they supposed to do? What are the students who don't really get O-level passes or the equivalent to the degree to move on? What are they supposed to do? Besides repeat. And what if they don't want to repeat? Well, I guess potentially now based on how it was framed. So it's not to say that this is the actual deliverable, this is what it is. It's just how it's presented, first by the minister and then by the press that reports what he presented. I just feel as though a lot of people who were doing it the right way, the responsible way, you get an older teenager, they get a little job for some little pocket money, the parent is happy that they are off of the streets, not getting into trouble, and learning responsibility. Is that all going to come to an end? And then, more importantly, what about the gray areas? You're doing work for your school. Is that not child labor? Is it child labor? You're doing work for your family business. You're actually not getting paid. You're doing housework. Some of the things that the ASP was talking about, I don't know if this initiative, ironically, as much as I said it's a blanket, I don't know if it will dig into the informal, unpaid examples of child labor, which are probably more widespread than children in sweatshops and children having to do hard labor, etc., etc. So, I mean, at the end of the day, we needed a work from home policy for the pandemic, and we're talking a year later, maybe 2 years later, it's still coming down the pipe. Great. Better late than never, except one would hope we don't have a pandemic anytime soon. So, yeah, it might be a little too late for the needs that generated that. And now with regards to this, again, I wonder if we're going to be missing the mark. All right, let's move on. Prime Minister, in his post-cabinet press conference, he mentioned with regards to criticisms over projects in Tobago, including the plans for the hotel on Rocky Point, which is on the north coast, I believe, just before or around, in the vicinity of Buko Mount Seven, as well as he even brought up the airport. Now, what he said was, and to some extent there's some truth into this, but I would argue a very, 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 very small amount of truth based on what we've seen in the past. He said, we need more hotel rooms, more quality hotel rooms, and we need more capacity at the airport if we want to get more tourists. Here's the thing. So with regards to the airport, he pointed out the fact that planes are getting bigger and there are more demands for larger airports. Now, with regards to the plane size, that basically implies two things. Is your runway long enough / big enough, but primarily that means length for a larger plane to land. Now, from what I understand, the odds of an A380 or 747 ever landing in Crown Point are virtually zero because they've both been discontinued from production. Those are the two jumbo jets, right? That's not to say that wide-body planes, that's basically planes with 2 aisles. We're talking 7 passengers to 9 passengers abreast. I think currently Boeing might be trying to squeeze in a 10th. I'm not entirely sure. They're constantly trying to move around how they configure the shape of the plane, literally the curve of the tube, as well as how they fit, how many seats abreast they could fit. Wide bodies will be in production, just not jumbo jets. And we've had, I believe, Airbus A330s, which are wide bodies, may not be the biggest wide bodies, but they're wide bodies, land in Crown Point already. So we might not need an upgrade of the runway. In fact, what we're getting is the terminal. Now here's the thing. In theory, yes, we need the terminal upgraded because if we want more passengers, at some point, the facilities in Crown Point are probably going to be too small. The problem is we actually need people to come here. They have to come here. Because from what I understand, one airline, they fly to St. Lucia, and then they have a leg to Tobago to refuel, and then they go back to Europe. And British Airways, I think currently, or at least at one point, they flew to Antigua, then they have a leg to Tobago, where they probably refuel, and then they go back to Europe. Not a lot of people are on the plane for that leg to Tobago, whether it's first or second. The bulk of the passengers and the money is made to other Caribbean islands. And then savings are made by refueling in Tobago. At least that's what it was at one point in time. We actually need passengers coming here to actually push the capacity of the airport beyond what it has. Now, granted, there are probably been times when the airport's capacity has been so pushed, but that's not 100% of the time. It's just not. And to what extent we need a $1.5 billion new terminal in order to make up for the limitations, I don't know. Is that the best plan? Because right now, what we need more than I thought he was going to say marketing. He said capacity. Now, there's some truth in the fact that, look, we need to have good rooms for people to want to come here. But for the most part, Cocoa Reef was built when tourism, foreign tourism, still had a certain degree of popularity. I was in secondary school at the time, and even during the Easter vacation, there were British tourists. And Cocoa Reef has probably seen a decline in business because I said Easter. And I remember when I was in secondary school, foreign tourists would come in at the end of August. Now, one might argue they potentially could have even come in earlier, but the local market also puts a lot of demand on Tobago, so the August vacation period is always heavily booked out by Trinbagonians, well, by Trinidadians primarily. So, end of August, I remember seeing European families coming in early September to stay in Tobago. And it went as far as Easter. The current period is potentially around New Year's Day, if not after, the month of January, and then maybe February. Maybe. We're talking a foreign tourist season of less than 2 months, last I saw. And that may be an overestimation. I may be too generous there. As opposed to September to April or March. That's a 6 to 7 month window. And somehow Crown Point was fine then. We don't have the demand. So unless, now, okay, here's the thing. And I'm going to have to make an assumption there to kind of connect the dots. And it should be done for us if you did effective messaging, if this is the intention and if this is truth. If you want to say, well, before we start heavy marketing, we need to do infrastructure improvements, fine. All right, I get it. You don't want to market Tobago and then you flood Crown Point and you basically get a bottleneck in the airport. Okay, cool. But that's not what's being said. I don't think the government said nothing about marketing. Prime Minister didn't say the way marketing once. I didn't see the whole press conference, but I listened to all of what he said there. Maybe he answered a question to a reporter later down the line. But generally speaking, we don't hear much about marketing TNT. Do we? Where's that part of the conversation? Because Barbados spent last year 100 million US, which is, depending on where you go, 670 million TT dollars equivalent, give or take. And 600 million is a figure that I've heard for that Barbados spends on marketing in the past. That is to say, of our dollars. So, sorry, that's a bit of a misrepresentation. It could be that we need to spend about 600 million to just make up the deficit of our lack of presence, our lack of market share, our lack of brand awareness by the potential customer base, because we're competing with every island in the Caribbean that has a viable tourism product, including Cuba, Puerto Rico, Margarita, etc., as well as the Mediterranean, the Middle East, the South Pacific, the Southeast Pacific. There's a lot of tropical destinations in the world. It's not just us. And we are at the tail end with so much advantages, but not enough effort, willingness. So again, I get it. I understand the Prime Minister is a Tobagonian, but I have literally seen this song and dance before. Magdalena did not bring in tourists. So the fact that we need more rooms when Magdalena is effectively a failed project, granted, Rocky Point is a better location for a hotel. Maintenance-wise, it's a better location for a hotel. But again, they built Hilton. Not enough people came. Hilton pulled out. We rebranded it to Magdalena. That was the next plan. And it wasn't really doing well even before the pandemic. Now, a private investor is going to have a hotel. Great. That doesn't mean it's going to work. Not without all of the other things, as in, why are people going to want to come here? The hotel and the airport is not the selling points of a Caribbean island. I don't pick my vacation destination based on the accommodation and the airport. I pick my destination based on what the location offers, particularly what unique aspects it might have. Because if I just want a nice place to stay, I'll go on a cruise ship. Now, like I said, we have some quick crime stories to get to. First off, something that I do appreciate, the head of the Northwest Regional Health Authority, a former member of the regiment, by the way, he has basically released security measures, not all the details, mind you, that have been done with regards to Port of Spain General Hospital after the attack. And I do like his messaging. He said, look, we would never have thought of this to have happened before. 5 people with automatic rifles, you know, they would have never considered as a possible scenario. But now that we have seen it, we have to plan for it and other eventualities at the hospital and put in the mitigating measures. That includes, the headline I find is a bit odd. They say that a new security gate was installed, but that's not the only thing apparently that's been done. I do believe, of course, there's going to be more police. There's more security. And I guess these are going to be ongoing things because to some extent, sustainability is going to be, unfortunately, part of the equation. Security always comes with the, well, how long are you going to be willing to pay for X level of security, right? So, new cameras, new personnel, additional gates, all of these things, they're on the board. The point is, I like his messaging, and I like the philosophy that it implies. Now, next story. Yeah, so another teenager was killed. 17-year-old. Apparently, I can't remember if it's his family basically say, look, They might have been started to follow the wrong company, the wrong crowd. Based on the details, he was lying at a friend's house. Neighbors heard gunshots, and they found the teens lying dead on the floor in the living room. 2 teens were hit. One 19-year-old, he was shot on the right side of his buttocks, and is said to be in a stable condition. The other one shot in the head. This was done with pistols in a living room. So the proximity of the shooter, in theory, unless it was done through an open doorway or window, would have been rather close. I don't know if this is going to be one of those times where we're going to say it's collateral damage. Now, apparently, he may have been running with the wrong crowd. I don't know if somebody is going to try to pass this off as gangsters killing gangsters. But at the end of the day, for whatever reason, whether right or wrong, whether he was involved or anything shady or not, this 70-year-old boy, for all intents and purposes, seems to have been targeted. At least that's initially the more likely conclusion to be drawn. He was shot in the head. We don't know if maybe they were playing around with a gun or if it was execution style. But it wasn't a spray and pray scenario, at least not what we have now recently become accustomed to. And the irony of the situation is I'm not entirely sure which one is worse. I'm not entirely sure which one is worse. Because if 17-year-olds now are going to be the targets for murder, for whatever reason, and some people might think it's just the eventual reality that we were probably going to have to face sooner or later, because we know that crime is getting younger and younger. It's starting to influence younger and younger people. The reports are out there. It's been spoken about already. But still, at what point are we going to say enough is enough? And then the last story, and again, shout out to ASPLE and all of the TTPS media ambassadors. I'll never say that all of the police are bad. I'll never say all of the police are worthless, because there are those who do their job. And one of the things that the service is trying to communicate with us is to be careful with regards to Facebook Marketplace or any other website that does retail or any other way you might remotely connect with a seller or buyer, because it could be a scam. And if you don't protect yourself, you might get robbed. Now, and they have their stuff on social media trying to get the message out, but I guess not enough people are either getting the message or they're underestimating the situation. First of all, don't be afraid to feel like the hard case, to look like the hard case, right? Don't just hand over your money just like that. Be difficult, because you don't know who these people are and you're trusting them with your money. Now, in one case, they arranged for a meetup to buy a phone in cash, which implies that I'm walking with the cash. And yes, I think essentially they met up on Eastern Main Road near Success Lavantil in the afternoon. The victim and a friend, 3 men approached them, and what I read online is what could be the case is sometimes they might get a woman to arrange the deal, maybe a fake female profile, or if there's a phone call, a woman's voice, whatever. But then when you go, multiple young men now will jump you instead. 3 men approached them. They basically stole the watches and money, credit cards, links cards of the victims. I don't think it was necessarily said if they were armed, what weapons they had to threaten the victims, with basically 2 versus 3. One would assume that the assailants were armed, and that is that. There's a physical description in the report. That is generally how it goes, which is why the police ambassadors are saying, do these things at a police station. Now, there's a second case, because there were 2 incidents in the report, and this one is a little bit more interesting. And this is where I'm like, look, be difficult. Don't just be willing to hand over your money. Yes, you don't want to seem like a jerk, but hey, you need to kind of be careful about these things and not just be rolled over, not be a pushover. Apparently, two men went to a law firm in Arima to finalize a rent-to-own agreement for a car, a Tita. The victim, I believe, gave the suspect $3,000, which I assume would have been a deposit. And then the suspect said that he had a phone call and he walked out to the waiting area. Never to be seen again. No paperwork. I don't know if he saw the car, what have you. It's somewhat of a smart scam, right? Because it makes it seem like we're going to a safe space. Yes, I'm not going to commit violence on you. I'm just essentially going to scam you in front of your face of your money. And you're not going to realize it until it's too late. And as always, and the cybercrime unit has it on their Facebook profile. I believe they have their own Facebook profile. If it seems too good to be true, if the deal seems too good to be true, you have to be even extra cautious. You need to cross your T's, dot your I's, be difficult. There's a reason why on TV, when you see people doing criminal activities, they're careful when they bring the money in, when they bring the product in, blah, 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 blah. And essentially what you're doing is in theory, a legal version of that kind of transaction. If you're not careful, you'll be put in a position where you could be taken advantage of and no help could be forthcoming in time. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, I'll run a clip from the press conference. Stay tuned. This is Talking Point.
Imagine a world where arguments don't exist. CICR is a full-service conflict resolution company that offers mediation training and workshops for all. In 2024, our 40-hour workshops are back, giving you all the tools you need to become a certified mediator in Trinidad and Tobago. Want to know more? Call us at 768-6778 or visit our website. Let's work together to make the world a better place.
Maybe he landed here totally by coincidence. But if by chance he's admiring your fresh coat of Benjamin Moore soft sky blue, well, that's a pretty high compliment. Coming from an expert.
Welcome back, folks. And of course, putting aside crime, the other big ticket issue, the other big concern is the economy. And currently it's the talk about increasing government taxes, maybe a reduction in government benefits and services. And at the post-cabinet press briefing, one of the reporters attempted to ask a question about CDAP. And before he could even get the question out there, the Prime Minister decided to answer what he wanted to answer, right? But that's just the funny story of how the question happened. I have a bit of that answer there, which I think highlights a very interesting trait of the Prime Minister, and I'll speak more about that. But first, the clip. It's time to cue this.
telling you don't touch this and don't touch that, don't touch the other. They're very silent on other monies, you know. But government money is fungible. $900 million you allow OAS to go away with. The parliament is investigating that matter now. What is Mrs. Prasad Biswas telling our people? Don't take part in the parliamentary investigation of the $971 million issue that we had to go to court. We had to go to court and fight to be allowed to get that money back. We got it back with a caveat. We used it. We built the Point 14 highway instead of the contractor going away with the money. But they're still fighting arbitration, and I told this country, if they manage to win the arbitration, because you never know, a courthouse is a lottery. If they manage to win the arbitration and the court forces us to give them back the money, you would have paid for the highway twice. Because the government that she led took out the clause that protected the taxpayer, where it was said that if the company goes bankrupt, the government owns the bonds. They took out that clause the day before the election of 2015 and have the unmitigated gall to be coming now and want to question this government and telling the government, don't touch CDAP. As if you are so concerned about ensuring that the public money is spent on the public. There's a contractor who is now in Panama who left this country the day after the election. That contractor received a $1 billion contract for something that they were building in Beaton that is covered in bush down there and it cannot be completed. And when you looked into it, they were paid 80% of the money for 40% of the job. The last $1 billion they took out of NGC. They took out $17 billion from the NGC. That was the last billion, and gave it to a contractor. In a contract where two contractors were bidding as qualified contractors. One was SIS, another was a Mexican contractor, and both of them qualified. One bid, I think it was a billion, and the other one bid 400 million, something like that. And they gave it $400 million more. That's what they did. Let me tell you something else too. We were engaged in attempting to stop contractors from making claims against you, taxpayer. There was one contractor who had certificates of claim for $1 billion. And had the UNC won the election, they would have paid every cent of those claims. We fought those claims because they were not entirely without concerns to us. In the court, the judge removed approximately $600 million of that. Does that mean anything to you, people of Trinidad and Tobago? Had the PNM not gone to court and fought it competently, in a sustained way, and getting the court to rule that of these claims, only 400 million is certifiable. If I had led a government where those three examples I just gave you there was the record of my government, I would hang my head in shame and hope that you forgot that I was here. Let me give you one more before we go off. Cureup interchange that you now take for granted. You pass below Cureup interchange and go up the road, you don't even look at it again. That was being built for $500 million. Election 2015. Bacchanal over it. Minister fired. Remember that story? When we came in, we canceled all those arrangements and we went out to open the tender, qualified tenders. And we got the best tender. I think it was $325 million. No, 225. The tender came in at 225. We built it for 217, right? And $300 million were not added to that project. Cureup interchange. That would have been built for $500 million had the election been different. So frankly, I don't intend to spend much time being sidetracked by Mrs. Prasad Bissessa and her group, which includes, incidentally, the Lysport people.
Now, the Prime Minister did address the whole claims about increasing VAT and why the documentation didn't necessarily mean exactly what the opposition leader presented them to mean. I myself was waiting to see, all right, what could confirm these documents as being true, because at the end of the day, they were documents. Now, it's not to say the documents were a lie. The Prime Minister is just saying that, look, these documents, the purpose of them are not what the opposition leader is framing them to be, which I think is more or less a reasonable defense unless something more substantial could be provided to us to indicate otherwise. Now, with that said, what we just saw the Prime Minister do is, in my opinion, and I never really, on a first-hand level, fully understood why my co-host, Mr. Keaton Shah, who, yes, is not always here, I understand that, but he's still co-host, why he says that the Dr. Keith Rowley was an excellent leader of the opposition. And I think it really just clicked for me when I saw this part of the press conference. This was my aha moment, because to some extent, how he was looking to make a case to defend his positions, and to some extent you could be arguing that, look, he's kind of trying to do a misdirection thing here. We talk about CDAP, we talk about other things, but he's kind of pointing out, again, to the principles of the matter, the best indicator of future behavior is past behavior. Karen says that not all the time, but regular enough. In my mind, to some extent, this is what we would like to see out of the opposition leader. Not just giving us emotional arguments about they're wicked, see they're wicked, and they're going to increase VAT because I have a thing that has numbers and it says VAT increase, so they're going to do it. And then emotional argument to rile you up. I'm not saying that there's never a time to do it, but, you know, academically speaking, technically speaking, that's not always the best thing, most of the time. No, what the Prime Minister was doing is, this is why I don't trust them, because they did this, and they did this, and they did this. And he gave out details. Granted, if what the Prime Minister said is not true, usually my minimum baseline test is, what will the other side say to counter it? Usually when the Prime Minister counters something, at the very least, he gives details, not necessarily, you know, physical evidence, but details. It's harder to be lying or to make up stuff if you're going to go into details, because one, now you have definite things to check. And two, if you're not careful, usually how do liars or con artists get caught? Because they can't keep up with all of the lies. So when politicians in general go into detailed arguments, that tends to give what they say some more weight. And the Prime Minister, whenever he's upset with the opposition, I don't know if he's doing it straight off of memory, speaking off the top, or if he has done a little bit of research to prepare. But he tends to be a bit more detailed. He tends to have a bit more examples to show, which tend to not be disputed, hence further leading credence to the validity of what he's saying. It's not necessarily dealing with the issue at hand, which is why I say this is not an example of great leadership in government, right? It's just a good example of a debater. And that's what we needed out of the opposition. I mean, at least one could argue it's not a great example of a debater, but we're kind of grading on a curve here, all right? Bear with me. We kind of needed this from the opposition. And to some extent, the Prime Minister has buoyed his administration in moments like this, where he's gone out into post-cabinet press meetings and gone out when he's returned from trips, he's had a press conference at the airport or when he's leaving, etc., etc. He's said his statements, he's answered some questions. Again, it was kind of funny, he preempted the question by going on his soliloquy about CDAP and then went into the various things that he went into that you heard just now. But the point is, he seems to be more prepared. He seems to have a better grasp of the subject matter, that is to say, the history of governance in Trinidad and Tobago. And I think it has, at times, effectively propped up his administration, because at the end of the day, you can't use this to necessarily substitute good work, good implementation, particularly with regards to the various ministries and ministers from whom we hear very little about. But ironically, what he's doing here is also what we would like to see from the Commissioner of Police, from the Minister of National Security, from others who they are in their own ways in CEO-type positions, senior management positions, where they're not necessarily going to have their hands in the dirt, but they're supposed to be leading and providing messaging to the public as a leadership function, and we're not getting that. We get that from the Prime Minister. One could argue we need more of it. One could even say he's not doing enough. But I just thought it was interesting to me. I get an example of, okay, this is probably why Keaton says he was excellent as opposition leader. His capacity to debate, to go into the issue. And again, he's not actually going into the CDAP issue. So of course, on the actual truth of the matter, you know, he's kind of doing a good deflection job here. But for the life of me, one could argue this should be the minimum amount of effort. And don't get me wrong, a lot of foreign politicians aren't able to do this either. But these are high-stakes games politicians are playing with our money. Money that's supposed to be invested for the future of the nation, which will impact the lives of our future generations. And they're essentially playing a high-stakes game. And to some extent, I don't understand how it is that we allow new challengers to come in who at times blatantly show their lack of ability. Or we hold on to the old challengers who have proven time and time again their deficiencies. And that's within all parties. There aren't even a lot of members of the PNM who come as equipped as the Prime Minister. He's the Prime Minister. You could argue he's not a great Prime Minister. He's just the best of what we've got. And maybe what I just said there is an indictment not just on the opposition, but also on the PNM itself. And one could hope that when the time comes that Dr. Keith Rowley retires, well, what we really should hope for is someone better, because we should always be trying to improve, but at the very least, not a step backwards. And I don't know if we could deal with a step backwards. We already can't deal with what we have right now. It might seem like I'm all over the place, but I'm trying to point out, ironically, the good and the bad in one aspect of leadership in the country. Because to some extent, to tie into what I said yesterday, we're going to need a lot of that. It's not just about what do we cut and where do we spend, but rather it's about leadership so that the country could not just buy into the message, but all fall in behind and support and follow through with the message, because it's not just about who's going to solve our problem for us. And one could argue, is this enough to do that? Or do we need more? I leave that up to you. Let's take a break. When we come back, last chance for the week, we open the phone line. Stay tuned.
The newest book is here, Closer to the Church, the debut novel by author and former mayor Louis Lee Singh, available at all the Home Store branches, Barataria, West Mall, Shogunas and C3 San Fernando, paper-based bookshop 10 Nook Avenue St. Anne's, WESN 30A Gattaca Street Woodbrook, Metropolitan Bookshop Ariapita Avenue Woodbrook, and all RIK bookstores nationwide. Available online as paperback on Amazon.com and Kindle for e-readers. For more info, call 628-5835 or 389-6504. Also available from author Louis Lee Singh, I Used to Live in Heaven, Letters to My Granddaughters, and Local Government in Trinidad, Conspiracy Against the People.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378, or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
The home of Caribbean content is growing, and we welcome you to be a part of the #1 platform for young personalities who are driven to make a positive impact in society. As we continue to reach every corner of Trinidad and Tobago through our daily broadcasts, our social media pages, or through our 75+ digital billboards across the nation, contact us to learn about our competitive rates via marketing at wesncc.com or call us at 628-5835. WESN Content Capital, television with a difference.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
Welcome back to Talking Point, ladies and gentlemen. Last chance for the week to call in and have your say. And as we reach closer and closer to decision, indecision, unfortunate decision, Lord help us with this decision 2025, the race to the bottom, I would hope that people become more and more, should I say, engaged for whatever it's worth. Even if, like Mr. San Fernando, you're saying, spoil your ballots. You know, I think we need to actively participate now and not just passively accept and tolerate whatever is dealt to us and inflicted upon us. Do we have a caller on the line?
Good morning, good morning.
Morning.
David
Martin, morning.
Right. I am at variance of you saying the Prime Minister good debater. What is a good debater? One who's calm and collective, delivers his rebuttal and his argument. Yes, he puts some arguments, but his rebuttal is, of course, wrong, inaccurate, and sometimes borders on inaccuracies.
Okay.
That is all I have to say. For example, you say he seems to be prepared. You know why is he prepared? His press conferences are, what should I say, managed.
Mm-hmm. Well,
he selects people who will ask him questions that he might have passed on to them. Case in point, one of the journalists who has always been a fly in his ointment and under his skin was Robert Amar, when Robert Amar pointed him for telling lies with the Sanders and the former Minister of Finance, the runner, I forget his name, Motley. So to me, if I have to grade you on saying the man is a good debater, I'll give you 10 for that out of 100.
okay.
The second issue is, why is he going to Parliament to tell us about SSS? Is he usurping the pure authority of the security personnel? Is he going to give us another Fitzy scenario where Fitzy signal to the criminals and where they get the evidence from? Is he going to tell us that because it appears that he likes to go in Parliament, and when he go in Parliament, he maligns and nothing comes out of it? Case in point, email gate. Gary went behind him for basically saying you're going to put something there to throw mud on me, on my character. So everything is a fallacy. Why didn't the journalist ask him about the A and V arbitration? Why didn't he say there was a judgment in the OAS matter already, and they bring it back to this court, the appeal in Trinidad court, and they allow them to go back for the thing. That arbitration was already fulfilled in an international court in England, the judgment. So this excuse and waffling and word salad to confuse his supporters wouldn't make people sensible. Because you know what I'm looking for? He's saying the judiciary take long for case. I am looking for the email gate. No, the Nelson Gate issue. Why that has taken so long is 100 million with a cabinet supporting it. And if you have an affidavit saying that the former Attorney General was wrong, why isn't the former Attorney General before the court for misbehavior in public office? Because you manage your police leadership. I'm going to have a next morning.
Caller, I appreciate what he said. Note, I did say things to the effect of I'm grading him on a curve. That means we're stacking him against his peers, and he makes his peers seem wanting. Not necessarily saying that he is a great debater. But think about it. It does its job well, because I also said he's not dealing with the topic at hand, ironically. He's not actually dealing with CEDA, right? But he's dealing with it at least more effectively than most other politicians who speak publicly. I did also find that his complaints about, I can't remember if it was the OAS appeal, but it taking too long to get the next hearing scheduled, I found that deliciously ironic. It's like, well, do something about the court systems, please. I don't know, that might help the criminal justice system as well. But again, that's a tall order. He was complaining about the litigations and the use of the courts against the government. All right, fair enough. You're in the government, though. I mean, if you're complaining about the inefficiencies, make it more efficient. Do we have another call on the line? Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Yes, sir. Good morning.
Morning.
Yes, I called yesterday for the first time, and after I called the caller after me, I'm sick to say that he asked the question, what am I doing? And he said that the fact, even though I'm complaining about the present government, he said that I have to remember that they got there by legal means and by people voting, which I don't know why he said that, because I am aware of that. I understand how democracy works, you know. But nonetheless, I don't know if he's looking, if he's watching, but I just want to tell him. I have called into this program yesterday for the first time. That's what I am doing. I am raising issues. I have been writing letters. So he wouldn't know. I've been writing letters in the newspapers for over 30 years. Right? I call in on all the different programs. The two main stations, I call in on those programs, and I've been doing so for years because I am not happy with the state of my country. But I also want to tell you that I totally disagree with something you said yesterday.
Yeah.
You said the health sector. The problem with the health sector is because it is free. Listen to me. I don't know. You're a young man, right? As I said, I'm 70 years old, and I'll tell you. The problem with every institution in Trinidad and Tobago, understand me. I understand that people in certain countries who outrightly pay towards the health sector, and their health sector is better run. But the main reason that our health sector and our institutions are in a mess in Trinidad and Tobago has little to do, or I should say, has to do with money. It has not lack of money, but money, because, boss, since we have had self-governance, have never run our country properly. Since under Eric Williams that we have elevated to God status, we have put the wrong people in charge of our institutions because it's all about control, it's all about nepotism, and so forth. We have gotten this way, all our institutions have gotten this way because of poor management, and we have grown accustomed to mediocrity. Our voters we serve mediocrity at the altar, right? And it's so sad. A lot of us don't even understand what excellence is. You understand? Because we keep voting for this party, 50 years in office, and the same thing is happening. They're putting the same idiots in charge. You know what I mean? So I'm saying that, yes, I understand in a well-run country, the citizens actually are contributing to our health sector. It's good, but you have to have proper management. The great Eric Williams once said that money is no problem. Remember that? All right, but the problem in Trinidad and Tobago is money and is lack of professionals. You know, we keep putting these idiots in charge and hoping. And you look at the supporters when they win, they whine and they dance and what do they get for it? Why is it? Why is it? And I keep saying that our intellectuals, our educated class continue to fail this country by their silence. So many of them are silent and some of them talk and they speak in tongues. I don't understand what they're trying to say sometimes because it seems to me, sir, that to outrightly, publicly criticize the PNM is a curse in Trinidad and Tobago. Or let me put it this way, this might be funny, but it seems to me, because I'm a person watching all the time, it seems to me that criticizing the PNM, any PNM, but it's worse with this one, that criticizing on the public is as dangerous as giving the police information about gangs. Because something has to explain the silence of the people.
Yeah.
This country is a serious mess.
Caller, I think we have another caller that has been waiting, so I'm going to have to...
Go ahead, sorry, take care. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, caller. Do we have another caller? Okay, I still can't hear the locations that they're telling me, but we have a caller on the line. Good morning, caller. You're on the air. Caller, hello?
Good morning. Good morning.
Morning.
Yeah, Claxton Bay, boy.
Yes.
Yeah, Claxton Bay. Yeah. So, my money going on done, boy. That man talk so long, boy. I gotta call him back.
All right. Okay. Now, I think it was a caller from Couva, a second caller. I understand what you're saying and get it. Yes, I know. There's going to be a lot of mediocrity and poor performance that contributes to our problems. That's just a general assumption at this point. Not necessarily always going to be true, but for the most part, it's reasonable to assume it to be true to some degree or another. But what I said about healthcare is literally the experience of all healthcare systems, regardless of the amount of money that they have, right? It's not about money, you're right, but let's not forget, one, we have less of it. We have less money, and we've already had shortages in the healthcare system before COVID. The fact of the matter is, I'm not saying that healthcare shouldn't be free, but when it's free and we try to make it universally available, then potentially quality is going to suffer. If we try to give it high quality, the availability is going to suffer. And that went into the example that the caller yesterday had, or the day before, that the daughter had to wait for however long to get the specialist to be seen. Because when we have free healthcare that is universally available, we can't necessarily pay a premium for that. So, premium implies, you know, well, it's not necessarily going to be free. Yeah, we'll try and make it as high quality as possible, but it's just never going to be the premium. That's why a lot of the doctors, they have private practices. All right. We have Shagonas. Let's take Claxton Bay first so his money doesn't run out. Claxton Bay if we can. Caller, good morning.
Hi, good morning.
Morning, morning.
Yeah. Yeah, morning. Good morning, I'm Sean.
Go ahead, quick.
Sean. Yeah. Well, the guy, one of the things the guy said, who was talking plenty, is that we continue paying the wrong set of people in place all the time. And you see, that is a problem that we have in this country. You're paying people who just feel, well, then, if you look like you small, yeah, boy, we go put you. You don't have to have no education or nothing. We go just put you because you look like you. That's a set of dotishness we've been doing for years. So that's why the country mashing up in that kind of way. The next thing, we had to face facts. And only as media personnel could help shape this country. We have to let the people and them know that, hey, the government of the day doing a better job than the UNC. You understand? And we must face the facts. We must get people on board to understand that we are the people. We who pay them there, and we have to. You understand? We have to look to make that change.
All right, caller, is that it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you, because we have another caller that's also waiting. Shagoras on the line. Good morning, caller. You on here? Caller, good morning. If we could switch lines. Or did we lose Shagonas? Okay, maybe we lost Shagonas. I'm not always entirely sure.
Hello?
Hello, good morning.
Yes.
Morning, caller. You're on the air. We didn't lose you.
Okay, thanks. Again, you are trying to spit in the wind. You keep talking about crime, and you keep talking about resources, the economy. And I will explain to you the problem with that on a number of occasions. We had the most progressive system of taxation, and we enforced collection, and we have stopped that. The evidence shows clearly that is so. And secondly, matter of crime is enforcing all your laws. Again, you don't mean you lock up everybody, but you address the problem. And these things are not being done. Any questions or any explanations why you don't put up these points?
Well, I mean, I actually do at times reiterate that not all laws are enforced. With regards to the revenue collection, the thing is, the solution that's been on the table apparently for the last over 14 years, because it came during the Manning administration, is, I believe, unless I'm misremembering what Karen said, is the Revenue Authority.
Yeah, but the Revenue Authority can do nothing more than the Board of Inland Revenue. In fact, the Board of Inland Revenue can do more, because the people who get to the top of the Board of Revenue go through the system, right? With this revenue, they're going to bring people from outside who know nothing. So I don't understand where the logic of that Revenue Authority. Why it is they're not enforcing the law now that a Revenue Authority will enforce?
I do wonder if it could be something to do with regards to, or at least at one point, it might have been seen as though similar to PH taxis. Let's not enforce this law because poor people will suffer.
That is the problem. That is why I mean enforcing of the law. If the law is bad or inappropriate, you either amend it or repeal it.
Yes.
You don't ignore it.
Yes.
When the people see the government themselves breaking the law, what do you expect people to do?
Yes.
So I don't understand your logic.
I agree with you, 100%, Professor.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, caller. Yeah, I've said it before. The PH taxis are the example, and essentially what the professor here is saying something similar, if not the same thing. Don't have bad laws that we don't like, so we ignore it, because he's right. Then the public sees it, and they see, oh, look, the government could ignore laws. That means not all laws are sacred. That means we don't have to take all laws seriously. And then we get what we get. We get what we get. And then we kind of manage these things in these gray areas that, unfortunately, also leads to other complications like who's regulating PH taxis and what happens when crimes are being committed either with PH taxi drivers or to PH taxi drivers. We have San Fernando on the line. Good morning, caller.
Yes, Sean, morning.
Morning, morning.
I have to agree with the Prime Minister when he spoke about, going back to Tobago again, when he spoke about that, the airport. Now, the airport is literally three things. It is the runway, which you spoke about.
Mm-hmm.
It also is the terminal building.
Mm-hmm.
And it is the tarmac. And Tobago does not have a big enough tarmac.
Okay.
If it is that you're looking for increased amount of airlift to bring in more passengers, we have to have more parking spaces. If you look at, for example, the Barbados airport, the St. Lucia airport, the one on the other side, the big one.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at Antigua, same thing. St. Martin, they have bigger tarmacs because they need increased space to park more aircraft because of the volume of the passengers coming through there. And I think that is where his thought is, that they're looking to increase more space, more hotel rooms in Tobago to bring more passengers. Now, Sean, the thing is, the government is you have to do the infrastructure. You have to put down the plant. Yes,
I would argue that tourism has declined. So that is to say, we are nowhere near the limits of the infrastructure we have, and we're building further infrastructure for pie-in-the-sky dreams that there's no indication will be realized.
I totally disagree with you, and let me tell you why. The Tobago Hotel and Tourism Association also have a part to play in this. They also have a part to play in this. I am seeing these things while the government is doing what they're doing there. I am seeing, and the other phase that I am hoping for, I think is going to come, is that there's going to be some incentive put out there for hoteliers and guest houses to do an upgrade, because a standard is coming, and to do an upgrade on your facilities with tax credits, of course, and assistance, because we know the rooms in Tobago need to be upgraded. So it's a phase thing. This is not that airport thing is not this is not for tomorrow, you know, Sean. This is 10 years, 20 years down the line.
Yeah,
you know.
but caller, we have needs now.
Yes, Sean, but it can't happen with a snap of a finger.
I know, but the order of which we're doing this, I don't think is the most efficient or practical order.
You can't bring the passengers. You can't try to get the passengers first.
But caller,
something about them simultaneously.
Do you remember what tourism was like in the 80s and 90s? The amount of foreigners that there were in Tobago?
Yeah.
And and did we have a larger tarmac? Did we have a larger terminal? Did we have more hotels back then?
Yes, but no, you have to understand one thing. The facilities at that time were newer. Look at the four big hotels in Tobago.
No, but caller, we're not talking about. We're mainly talking about capacity. I understand. Before we get into standards, and again, if it's about standards, like you said, we could renovate what we have. But with regards to capacity, the demand for the product has shrunk to the point where it's arguably almost nothing. We need to, at the very least, get to 80% capacity, 70%, 50% capacity before we have a need to increase capacity.
Yes, but we need to have the quality of what the people want.
But that's a different argument. We don't need a new hotel.
The thing is, Sean, everything has to work together. I think the tourism package for Tobago is weak in terms of marketing and in terms of what we have to offer. Those two things are weak. They are very weak. And we have to. You see, the thing is, with the upgrade of the airport, if you look at, you have to have the same type of standard as the others. If you look at Greendot, if you look at Barbados, if you look at St. Lucia, Trinidad, Tobago does not have the same type of facility.
But Mr. Sanfernando, you could at least understand where I'm coming from. We have seen this strategy before. Let's build a thing, and then it does not achieve what it was thought to achieve, what it was meant to achieve.
And I agree, but you see, Sean, going back to the caller before Claxon B, who said the people. This is part of the thing, you know. Tobagonians and Trinidadians have to understand that this is once they say we have to put our best foot forward. You know, when the St. Lucia, when the St. Vincent airport was the new airport was done, the Prime Minister made a speech. He said, "We did the airport, and we are offering incentives to expand your hotel. If you have 5 rooms, try and do 10, or 8. If you have 20 rooms, try and do 30." He said, "But now it's up to you."
And therein lies my other point, caller. We're going to try to increase the capacity of the airlines, and we're going to try to increase the number of rooms and the quality of rooms at the same time. There's no indication to what the marketing would be, so we have no reason to think the actual number of tourists is going to increase. What's probably going to happen is...
And this is where the opportunity is, Sean. That is where the opportunity is.
Hold on.
Don't look at it as half full.
Crown Point hotels cannot compete with the national marketing budget of just Barbados. As private institutions, they do not make enough money to compete with that level of marketing. Trust me, I know that. You, of course, will know why I know that, right?
Yes,
not even close.
Yes, Sean. However, the focus has to be shifted. You remember, let me say this, the Grenada national budget for the government around all of Grenada is less money than what Tobago gets on the 4.03%. The Grenada budget is less than that.
Okay.
It is less than that. So there is room. Let me put this here. There is room for the entities that have the power to do what you're talking about to do it. It is just that we have to get our ducks in a row. We have to get the right people in place, and then we have to get the association that is responsible, the people who own all these plants and these plants in Tobago, to get themselves in and push the administration to get this thing in order. That's what it is.
Yeah, but the thing is, right, we've seen this before. We've seen grants, we've seen loans. They didn't work, right? We've seen these things before. And to be fair, Tobago hotels still need to recover from the pandemic, right? To recover their room stock, right? So to some, I wouldn't mind grants, but to say that we're going to have grants to renovate and to upgrade rooms, we've literally, I've seen multiple projects that has come and go. What is probably going to happen is Rocky Bay probably is going to be more viable than Magdalena because it's on the west coast, right? Yes, and then what I fear is going to happen is Magdalena is either going to be forced to close down because they can't continue operations. Cocoa Reef, I don't know if the owner wants to continue, if he wants to sell out. And other local hotels that cannot compete because they built a thing and it's more or less operating during a virtual ghost town of tourism, right? And now we're going to struggle to try to renovate it as it got old. But we don't have a market to supply all of these hotels with tourists, so some of them are going to close down. Now, granted, some of them should, but
Magdalena was a lemon, Sean. It was created to build it where they built it. Let's leave that alone. Let me ask this question.
Okay, go ahead.
For somebody who understands the business like yourself, because you do, I would like you to shift your focus and start to speak about what needs to, because you keep saying what they're doing wrong. So start to tell them what to do, Sean. That it has to start somewhere. Plant the seed.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Plant the seed and start to say what needs to be done to bring the numbers up and to get the quality room stock, to get Tobago to where we want it to be, to get Tobago to have numbers. I'm not even talking about Barbados. To get Tobago to get numbers like this, that Greendot, because Greendot is the least of all of them.
Yeah.
You understand? Yeah. That is what we need to do. Have a good weekend, Sean.
Thank you, Kola. I mean, I'll just say this. I'll offer this up. Marketing is the obvious one, but also something needs to be done to kind of organize the industry as an industry. So it's not just a set of people doing random things on their own. Granted, of course, each individual hotel will have a certain amount of freedom to conduct this business, but as an industry, and I don't know if the Hotel Association does this enough, shows enough leadership, or if there's enough leadership in the industry. And I think that's a problem, because then it comes down to networking, dissemination of information, and then promoting linkages with various service providers, et cetera, so that it's a more cohesive national product as opposed to everybody kind of off on their own thing. But with that said, I'll just say this to Mr. Coover. Ironically, you and Claxton Bay, you kind of started to connect the dots back to what Mr. San Fernando was saying. We put the wrong people. And part of that, the responsibility comes to the voters. Sometimes you could say the politicians fool us, but then, you know, as we've said on the show a few times in the last couple of months, fool me once, shame on me, shame on. Fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. I always get it wrong. Bloody hell. Now, so if they keep gonna fool us, at some point we have to take responsibility for that. That's what that saying implies. They could do it to us one time, but they can't do it to us all the time. And I think that's what Mr. San Fernando was getting at. So with that said, that is to say, what Mr. San Fernando was speaking about yesterday. We were mainly talking about tourism today, so those of you who didn't see yesterday, I might be confused. With that said, we have to close the show over time. Of course, stay tuned at 10 o'clock, 10 a.m. We have Andy Johnson, veteran, senior media host, journalist extraordinaire. He will have 10 questions. With that said, make today and this weekend a good day and a good weekend, as my co-host would always say. Remember your allegiance to each other and to your republic. Stay safe out there. We will see you next week, God willing. Bye-bye.
WESN.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
Young at heart, purpose-driven, patriot even. When you like to party, but are still passionate about discussing important issues, the only place where your needs will be met is WESN, Content Capital.
Signal, coming 2 weeks after Washington gave the Ukrainian army the green light to hit targets within Russia with US weapons. The Russian Defense Ministry released a video of the flotilla carrying out drills while approaching Cuba, and the Biden administration dispatched 3 destroyers to track the flotilla. Cubans watching said the arrival was good news.
We need each other. Cuba has a geographically strategic position in the middle of the Americas, and Cuba needs Russian economic help and technology.
This Russian tourist, enjoying Havana's sights with his wife, agreed.
I hope that the relationship between Russia and Cuba gets stronger. We have lots to offer each other.
Russian tourism to Cuba has so far doubled this year. As trade has increased, Cuba's position on the war in Ukraine has become more pro-Russian, with Havana now supporting the invasion.
Both nations, both Russia and Cuba, are subjected to unfair, arbitrary sanctions that originate from the same enemy, the Yankee Empire.
Though Russia and Cuba are moving closer together politically and economically, they're still not military allies. Nonetheless, analysts say that symbols like this will make any future rapprochement with the United States a lot harder. Sanctions placed on Russia since the war in Ukraine and extra sanctions placed on Cuba ever since the Trump administration are binding the erstwhile allies together.
Now, with just 42 days to go before this summer's Olympics, the flame continues its journey around France. The torch arrived in French Polynesia's Tahiti on Thursday, where it took a ride near some of the waves that will be hosting this summer's surfing events. Kemi Knight has more.
Aboard an ornate traditional canoe, surfer Vain Fierro carries a lantern to the island of Tahiti. It's on this beach that the best surfers in the world will be competing in just a few weeks. That includes Fierro. As a rising star, there's a lot of hope she'll bring home a medal for France.
It was a real honor to be able to light the torch this morning with the whole population and the new surfing generation. There was a real sense of sharing and unity.
A ceremony marked by colours and song, as the flame was passed on to her coach, Hira Terina Tufa. Throughout the day, 124 different people carried the torch through 11 towns on the island. It's the Olympic torch relay's third stop on its journey across overseas territories after a month of touring mainland France.
It brings me a lot of emotion to know that this flame has passed through not just France, but all the historic places in the world that took part in the Olympic Games, and to know that we are also part of this part of history. It's really emotional, and it's a great honour. I'll never forget it.
French Polynesia will be welcoming the world's greatest surfers and their fans from the 27th to the 30th of July.
Flame's next stop will be the French Caribbean. It arrives in Guadeloupe this Saturday. And that brings you up to speed with our top stories, but stay with us if you...
Every day, the economy shapes our lives. Globalization, the financial ebb and flows, and new technologies profoundly transform our society. Going beyond the numbers, People and Profit analyses the impact of the economy on our lives. Presented by Kate Moody, People and Profit, on France 24 and France24.com.
Hello and welcome to Access Asia. I'm Yuka Royer. Coming up in this edition, psychological warfare with K-pop and Dung. North and South Korea's ratchet up propaganda as relations between the two neighbours hit new lows. They're welcome until there's too many of them. Over-tourism and poor behaviour by some visitors are testing locals' patience in Japan. And what do real-life hobbit holes look like? We'll visit a town in Australia where a majority of inhabitants live below the ground. Tension has flared up again between North and South Korea in recent weeks, with both sides reviving Cold War-style propaganda campaigns. North Korea has sent hundreds of balloons carrying rubbish and even animal feces across the border. South Korea responded by deploying massive loudspeakers, blaring K-pop music and anti-Pyongyang messages across the 38th parallel. Well, for more on what this all means, let's bring in Lee Seung-yun, fellow at the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars and the author of The Sister, North Korea's Kim Yo-jong, the most dangerous woman in the world. Seung-yun, thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Now, North Korea has been worrying the international community with their intensifying missile tests and deepening military ties with Russia. How disconcerting then is this cross-border escalation in propaganda warfare?
Well, unlike the popular view out there, North Korea doesn't merely react to what the big powers do or say. They seem to have even a grand strategy of their own, and they escalate tensions and resort to provocations in incremental steps.